G'day folks. I have to excuse the wind noise tonight, but it's a bit windy and I want to get this thing in pieces. It's a Mercedes W111 SB 1960 rear end assembly for autopsy. I got this from Brad. He wants me to pull it to bits and just do an autopsy on it. As you can see, this end here is nice and clean, and this one here is covered in oil. It's been leaking. There's a lot of grey matter and stuff coming out of the bearing, so it may have even spun in its housing. Tremendous amount of backlash in the diff. It's just flogged out, very noisy and damaged. The bushing in this end here is all flogged out. You can see bits of rubber coming out everywhere. It's a semi-independent rear end, I suppose you'd call it that. It's like a live axle where the axle tubes swing. This spring is normally mounted up in there with another bracket on it, and the whole axle tube assembly bends in the middle, like that. They're an interesting little design. Two springs which bear against the body, and these ends here stop it from twisting back and forth with bushings. As you can see, they're flogged out, and that one there, I don't know where I put that one, but they're all ruined. So yeah, it's got a lot of miles on it. Even there's little pins for the brake shoes or something or other. I'm pretty sure it's brake shoes. They're half worn through. There's a big step worn on them. So we're going to see if the axles are salvageable. The housing itself might be flogged out if the bearing housings are gone, and in that case the whole thing's scrapped. But we'll try and pull it apart and just see how bad it is. I might degrease it first, although it'll be the equivalent of the Exxon Valdez crashing out here. The amount of oil that's going to come out of this thing's incredible. It's going to make a hell of an oily mess. So that's the centre spring. A tough little thing. So yeah, 1950 Mercedes. Sorry, that should be 1960. The car's 51 years old now. This is Brad's grey Mercedes, that is. If you watch any of his videos, you'd know he's got a grey Mercedes W111 SB 1960. Very nice car, and it drives very well now that it's got a new rear end in it. And yeah, this is the noisy old one which you'd remember in one of my videos when we went for a drive. You'd hear it whining in the background. Alright, let's make some pollution. Alright, we're nicely cleaned up and ready for autopsy. It's already started bleeding. I flipped it upside down and it's bleeding metallic grey oil with a tiny bit of water in it. The water's from me washing it. The metallic grey is simply because this thing has started to eat itself. Probably a good idea that Brad changed it when he did. That's unpleasant. It's not the darkest metallic grey. It's not like silver paint. When your diff oil turns to silver paint, then you know it's trashed. But it's getting there. Little grease nipples on here for the centre swivel. That bushing's all chewed out and coming out in pieces. There's a bit of it. Definitely past time to replace this one. Well, this is what I call the redneck method of removing a grub screw. I don't have an Allen wrench big enough to fit these giant socket screws, so all you need is a bolt with a head that's suitable size. In this case it's like a UNF bolt or something. And a pipe wrench. Or a pair of vice grips if that takes your fancy. Just jam the head of the bolt in, it's a nice fit. And then give it a heave. And out it comes. Chewed the hell out of the bolt. You will scrap the bolt doing it, but you get your little drain plug out. I mean, that's a big Allen wrench to get that out. That's probably a 16mm. I don't have one of those. But the good news is I got into the diff centre. You can see a little pinion in there. Very neat. Time to drain the nasty looking grey oil out of it. Well, that retainer's out. Got to find something to use as a slide hammer. Brand new Subaru wheel doesn't fit, unfortunately. Not that it cost me anything, it doesn't matter if I trash it trying to pull this bloody axle out. I don't even know it's off. Maybe a Forester or something. Shiny. That stud pattern's way too small. Maybe one of my old BMW wheels would work. Still spins, it's just noisy as hell. Evident by the black or silver coloured oil that's coming out of it. Just leaking nastiness. Well, one axle's free. This is the one that supposedly spun the bearing in the housing. Got some nasty marks on the outer race, but it doesn't feel grindy or bad. So I don't know what's happened there. We'll inspect the outer housing when the time comes. It's all there though. The retainer's still in place and tight. Yeah, gooey old oil. The splines look good. I mean, they're not worn thin, they're nice and consistent all the way down. Yeah. There is wear on the splines, but they're not thrashed out or chipped or chewed out like a lot of the axles I see at the junkyard. That's actually pretty damn good. Yeah, Brad will definitely be getting these axles back. He wants the axles back. Might leave them intact with the brake backing plate on them, as they are. Now, onto the next side. See how the other side goes. Okay, well the end that wasn't leaking doesn't seem too bad either. The bearing race isn't flopping or carrying on. It's not grindy. It's not slopping around. There are some marks on it like rust and other crap, but it's not stuffed. The splines are about the same. These ones here don't engage as far as the other side. So, yeah. They're worn but they're not thrashed out. I'll hang on to these for Brad to assess whether he wants to keep them. This housing looks pretty good. They've all been honed. This one here is nice and, I suppose you'd call it genuine. There's a bit of rust, the moisture's been getting in, but the bearing hasn't spun in it. The other end is a bit cleaner. Actually it's very clean, it looks like it's been honed. Something might have happened on this end, it might be scored, but I don't know. I won't scrap this thing until I get an absolute okay on it, because it's a pretty old piece of equipment and rather expensive when they're in good order. So yeah, something has happened though. You can see they've repaired it, cleaned it up. Oh well, we'll put these axles aside and get into the centre of it before it gets too dark. It's getting late in the afternoon. Well, I can't get this cross pin out just yet, at least until I figure out how it goes together. Nut and everything. There's a big bushing in there. That bit there is splined. Yeah, it's got a spline bushing in it, but I'm going to take all this end pit off. I've taken the tail shaft yoke off, and unless that's the bearing surface, I don't think there's any bearing left in there. But it was running fairly true when this was installed, so guessing the bearing race sits on there. At least I'd hope anyway. That's pretty loose at the moment. So I'm going to take all that off. I'm going to take this end here off and drop the other side of the diff, and we'll get into the guts of it. Doesn't matter about this bit. We'll determine what to do with the rest of it a bit later. Okay, well that's a tapered roller bearing, so the collar that I removed, the drive flange, is actually what preloads it. So it's understandable now that I've taken it out, it's all loose. But normally that's okay. If it's tensioned and in operating condition, it won't be flopping around like that. But that's the rear housing piece anyway. That can almost come off too. That's the centre support. That goes up through the back floor of the car, the trunk lid, or sorry, the trunk floor. It also has a centre support bushing in there as well. So, next step is to get this side out, take all these bolts out and pop it open. See what the real damage is inside this thing. Well, got all the bolts out. Time to crack the casing. There we go. Yep, there's a roller bearing race. Nice gooey, milky oil. Had a bit of wear and tear. How the hell can I get that centre out? Probably in there. Yeah, something's going to be holding that centre in. You can get diff oil over the camera, but it doesn't matter. Take that off, I think. I've got to pull all this other side off before it'll come out. Interesting. Yes, definitely worn. It's not a new one. Yeah, I found exactly what's holding that goddamn cross pin in. There's a little nut down there. That whole bottom edge is one little clench plate thing. It's split and it clenches together when you tighten the nut and locks this through bar or through pin in place. So if I can undo that, this whole bloody swing arm can come off again. So I've got to get that off, and then I've got to get this little uni joint off. It's like a wet tail shaft joint. And I've got the rubber boot and everything off it, but I can only get it out once this comes off. So I'll try and undo that bolt and get it all out. I hope nobody intends on using this crossbar, because it's ruined now. Just trying to knock the damn thing out. It's got a tapered pin. That's what was holding it in. The damn thing locks in hard. I don't think that casting's actually two pieces either, because it ain't given up. I've beaten the shit out of this rod, peened the whole end over on it, and all I managed to do is knocked it out that far and ripped the plug out of the end, like knocked all the threads out. So I've driven the plug back in hard again, and we'll try again, but that crossbar is going to have to be replaced if it's ever used again. I don't think it will be, because the housings are flogged out, but yeah, it's all fun. That's why I've got it. I've not been known to be subtle when it comes to dismantling equipment. Okay, that was somewhat tight, but managed to get the whole lot out. It's got bronze bushings in the swing arm, metal sleeve. What a mess. And get rid of those hose clamps. That's the diff assembly. Oh, with the uni joint and everything. Very interesting. And there's a bolt right down the guts of it. I'm guessing that's what I have to get off in order to remove this assembly. I've got to get the socket all the way down the guts of that. That's always fun.